So let's start the session, right? So I'm Nandini and I'm going to discuss Indian Constitution. Okay. And after the completion of every topic, each and every topic, there will be questions and there will be 4 options for you. How many of you think that Constitution is interesting and how many of you think that it is a bit difficult or boring? It is interesting. Interesting but tough. Yeah, of course. For some it is interesting, for many it is tough because the way we approach constitution is different. If we approach it in a good way, like how to remember certain articles and how to remember certain amendments, then it is really interesting. But the problem is that we won't know the answer at the time of the exam because we will get confused between 2 or 3 articles. We will know the concept actually, but we will get confused while answering there, right? So it is like revision for you. Okay, fine. So let's start the session, okay? First, we will see this syllabus of yours. Your syllabus is very less compared to actual Indian constitution. It has only topics like preamble, citizenship, fundamental rights. So it is around only 10%, okay? So you don't have to worry at all. So first, in this topic, we will come to about the answer for this question. Which is the most superior authority in our country and whose authority is considered final? So what do you think that is? To find the answer for that, before we should know one thing. To control or govern India, 3 organs are used. Supreme Court. Someone is saying Supreme Court. Okay, we will know the answer for this. Okay. So to control or govern India, 3 organs are used. Those 3 organs are legislative, executive, and judiciary. So work of the legislative is to enact laws, that is to create new laws. So how are those laws created? Through parliament at the center and state legislature at the state, right? And what about this executive? The work of this executive is to enforce those laws which were created by the legislative. Okay, so basically executive means the government, the union government, state government or local government. They will basically execute those laws. And what about judiciary? It provides justice. We know that, right? Added to that, it will also check the validity of the laws that were made by the legislative. Okay, so judiciary means Supreme Court, High Court, subordinate court, and also there are special tribunals, right? So we saw this hierarchy. Now remember this picture. So this is a simple way to remember it. Like legislative, it is saying that, hey, look, I made this new law, and it is giving it to executive. And that executive, it's saying that, good, let me put that in action. Okay. So this is the work of legislative and executive. And what is the work of judiciary here? It will check the validity of the law, whether that law is valid or not. Okay. So these 3 are the most important or most superior authority in our country. Many of us might think that it might be legislative or executive or judiciary, right? But these 3 organs are the most superior? Actually, it is not. The most superior authority in our country is Indian Constitution, okay? Not the legislative, not the executive, not the judiciary, but the Indian Constitution. You shouldn't forget this. Fine? Fine, let's see something about Indian Constitution. India follows the concept of rule of law. What does this rule of law means? Law is the supreme authority. Everyone has to follow the law. That is it. So Indian Constitution itself is a codified law. Okay. So everything that is needed to govern those 3 organs, these are like legislative, judiciary, executive, everything is given in our Indian Constitution itself. And all these 3 authorities derive their power directly or indirectly from the Constitution. So all the powers goes to them through the Constitution only. And Constitution derives its authority from whom? So who gave Constitution such a great authority? Who might be it? If you know, just type it, otherwise I will tell you anyways. Okay, fine. It is the people of India. Okay, we the people have given the Constitution that much power to rule everything. Okay. Let's see some features about Sandra Sabu, you are right. Okay, let's see some features about the Constitution. So, making of our Constitution. How was our Constitution made? For this purpose, Constituent Assembly was constituted around 1946, and then there were various committees among them. And one of the most important committee was this drafting committee, which was headed by B.R. Ambedkar. Okay, so 1950 Constitution came into force. Okay, so it took only around 4 years somewhat to complete our Constitution. Features is it is the lengthiest written constitution in the whole planet itself. Okay, So we can say that Indian constitution is the lengthiest written constitution. Originally, there was a preamble, 395 articles, which was divided into 22 parts, and also 8 schedules. But now, already it is the lengthiest written constitution. But now what has happened? See here, a preamble, 470 articles, which was divided into 25 parts and 12 schedules. So here you should remember one thing, that the numbering of the article will stop at 395 itself. Okay, whatever the new articles that were added, they are added through amendments, and they were added through alphabets like 21A, 31C, 51A, etc. There is no article like Article 470 or Article 400 and all. The numbering will stop at Article 395 itself. So this is the basic thing you all know, right? Bag of borrowed materials. Our constitution is also called as bag of borrowed materials. We saw that our constitution is the lengthiest written constitution. How is it possible to write such a lengthy document in just 4 years? It is the lengthiest written constitution in the whole world, right? So this is how it is possible. So our constitution makers, what they did was they borrowed or they got inspired from the constitutions of the other countries, and they took various inspirations from them and they added it in our constitution. That is how it became this much lengthier. And there are also Indian innovations also that we can't deny that. Fine. Okay, unitary or federal. Whether our constitution or a country is unitary or federal in nature. Unitary means the union, the center will hold more power, whereas federal means the states will hold more power. Can you give me one example for this federal feature? Any country which is federal in nature? Yes. So federal features are like division of powers. There is a division of powers between center and state, and then dual government. There is central government and there is state government, and independent judiciary. Judiciary is, we already know, it is independent from both central and state government, and supremacy of the constitution. It means whether it is central government or it is state government, everyone has to follow this constitution. Okay. What about unitary features? Strong center. If a state wants to go away from center, is it possible? If, for example, Karnataka or Bihar, whatever, it says that we want freedom and we want to go away from center, is that possible? Is it? It is not at all possible. That is why it is a unitary feature. And single citizenship. We all are from various states, but still we are all citizen of India, right? So single citizenship, that is a unitary feature. And integrated judiciary. Integrated judiciary means there is a hierarchy in judiciary, like Supreme Court, below that there is a High Court and then subordinate court. So judiciary is integrated. And all India services. All India services like IAS, they were all selected by the center, but they are posted at different states. So indirectly the center is controlling the states, right? So these are unitary features. So our constitution can be said as quasi-federal. It has all federal features, but also it has unitary features in them. So we can't say it as either federal or unitary. It is both. It is a combination of both. Fine. So vision of our founding fathers and the aims and objectives we actually wanted to achieve. Everything is given in this preamble: fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, and fundamental duties. So these four are very important, and they can be called as soul of our constitution. Okay, so these four are the soul of our constitution. Although this fundamental duties was not there in our constitution when it was written, it was added later through amendment. Okay, so till now you are clear, right? If no, otherwise answer this question. I might have given only simple questions for you. Just answer this. People of India. Then let's discuss about our preamble. Okay, I gave you this picture so that you could remember this picture by thinking that whenever you think about preamble, one thing should come to your mind, that it is like an identity card to our constitution. Okay, so that is why I gave you this picture. So whatever that is in our constitution, there will be a one-liner in the preamble. Okay, so remember this picture. So it will be easier for you to answer in exams. Okay, it is like an identity card. It is also called as identity card to our constitution. This is our preamble. So this is the important thing which might come in your exam. 3 words: socialist, secular, and integrity. These 3 were added by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. Guys, this 42nd Constitutional Amendment is a very important amendment. Okay, so wherever you read this 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, make a note of it. Definitely a question might come from this. Okay, only these 3 words were added later. Others were there: socialist, secular, and integrity. Fine. Now we will look about the preamble by disintegrating it into 4 ingredients. Okay, what are those 4 ingredients? Source of authority of the Constitution 1 and nature of Indian state, objectives of the Constitution and the date of adoption of Constitution. So source of authority just now we saw, right? It is in the first line itself. We the people of India. The source of authority of the Constitution is the people of India. And nature of Indian state. Our preamble also states that our Indian state's nature should look something like this with these 5 things: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. So these 2 were socialist and secular. They were added by amendments just now we saw. What about sovereign? It means independent state. There is no authority above it. What is this? India is free to print its own currency, right? It is free to keep its own army. It is free to make its own law. So that is sovereign. While we are under British rule, our country is not sovereign. We have to ask permission from British for everything. Now our country is a sovereign country. Okay. Socialist means it follows the ideology of socialism. In our country, we follow democratic socialism, which is a mixed economy where both private partners will also be there, public players will also be there. Both will coexist side by side. Okay. And then secular. All know that there are lots of religion in our country, right? So is there any particular religion which our government gives special status or special privilege? I'm not asking about the current scenario that is going on. Generally, I'm asking. I'm not asking about any ruling government or anything. Just generally, I'm asking. So no, right? All religion in our country have same status and support from the state. Okay? Okay, fine. Lakshmi is saying no. And then democratic. Democracy, we might have studied this from the lower classes itself. It is by the people, for the people, of the people, that concept. And Indian constitution provides for representative parliamentary democracy. What is this representative parliamentary democracy? Representatives means we won't go directly to the parliament or state legislature and take part and make laws, right? We will, through the right of vote, we will select some representatives and we will send them there. On our behalf, they will do all the decision making parts, right? That is representative. Parliamentary means we have a parliament in our country, unlike presidential form of government, which is in US, right? Republic. How can we say if a country is republic or monarchy? So republic means the head of the state will be elected, whereas monarchy means the head of the state will be hereditary. So for example, Britain, it is a monarchy. While here our nominal head is, he is president and our real head is prime minister. Both are elected directly or indirectly. So our country is republic in nature. Okay. Our preamble also tells some objectives that our constitution wanted to achieve in our country. So these are the 4 objectives: justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Justice means treating everyone equally. Okay, so without any discrimination based on color, caste, race, etc. And there are 3 forms of justice in our country: social, economic, and political. What about liberty? Liberty is nothing but freedom. So our country not only what is this absence of restraints on the activities of India, it not only restrains the individual from enjoying their liberty, it also provides opportunity for them to develop their individual personality. So that is liberty. And equality, it is equal treatment to all. We all know that without any special privilege. And fraternity, it is a sense of brotherhood. You might be from one state, I might be from different states. So many of you will from different states, but still we all have a sense of brotherhood, like we are the citizen of India, right? This is achieved through single citizenship. So we have single citizenship and it says we are the citizen of India. This is a sense of brotherhood. Okay. And finally, the date of adoption. So this is given in the last line of the preamble. The date of adoption is November 26, 1949. Okay. So here you should note one thing. The date of adoption is November 26, 1949. But the date in which our constitution actually came into force is January 26, 1950. That is our Republic Day. So keep these 2 dates in mind, because the question might be asked like date of adoption or maybe date in which the preamble came into force actually. So remember these 2 dates. Fine. That's it. We completed discussing about preamble. First, we saw the source of authority and nature of Indian state, objectives, and also date of adoption. Fine. Now answer this question. Please, everyone answer it. Okay. If you have any doubts, please post in the chat box also. Fine. Secular is the answer. Okay. Fine. So now we are going to discuss these four parts: citizenship, fundamental rights, DPSP, that is Directive Principles of State Policy, and fundamental duties. First, we will discuss about this citizenship, okay? Then we will go on to next topics. Citizenship. So I wrote citizenship like this. If you see here, I didn't use yes. Instead of yes, I used 5. This is to make you remember that Article 5 belongs to citizenship. If in question or in the 4 options, if you get any options like Article 5, you should know that it is citizenship. Okay. So try to remember most of the articles like this so that while answering, it will be really helpful for you in your exam, because our ultimate goal is to score in exam, right? We have to understand everything, fine, but the ultimate goal is to score in exam, fine. So remember this. So like any other modern state, India also has two kinds of people. One is citizens, another is alien. Citizens, they will enjoy all kinds of rights, whereas aliens means just an outsider, okay? So aliens can be divided into two, like friendly aliens and enemy aliens. Friendly aliens means they might have come to India for tourism purpose or for work purpose or for even for education purpose. And what about enemy aliens? If our country is in war with some country, for say for example, just for example I'm saying China or Pakistan, what will we do with the subject of those country? Can we treat them as equal? No, right? If we treat them as equal, that might threaten our security. So those people are considered as enemy aliens, and they are not given all rights during war. So that is enemy aliens. So articles related to citizenship, this fifth article is very much important. So this citizenship at the commencement of constitution. This article says citizenships at the commencement of constitution. Who all became the citizens at the commencement of constitution? Person who is born in India and either of his parents was born in India. If he has been ordinarily resident in India 5 years immediately before the commencement of constitution. This is what article 5 says. So this is why I wrote citizenship like that. Instead of S, I used 5. So you won't forget this, right? And then 6 and 7. These two articles are, we will interlink it like Article 6, rights to citizenship of person migrated to India from Pakistan. Many people came to India from Pakistan while our country got bifurcated. So rights of them are given in Article 6. And then Article 7, those people who migrated to Pakistan, but later they wanted to come back to India and they came back and resettled here. So that is given in Article 7. So here there is a word undivided India. In Article 6, if he or either of his parents or grandparents was born in undivided India. What is this undivided India? It includes 3 things, you know, right? Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. So this is the whole undivided India. Rights of citizenship of certain persons of Indian origin. For example, this girl over here, she is an African citizen, but she says that she is a person of Indian origin. How is it possible? But she is an African citizenship. Her grandfather is a person of Indian origin. He was born in undivided India. Okay, this is how person of Indian origin definition is. Okay, fine. So they might be connected to India in one or other way. So person of Indian origin. Recently, also in US, this is in current affairs, that women is going to be she is like nominated to vice president's post. She is a person of Indian origin. So this is how, if we relate to news, we will know this. And 9, 10 and 11, ninth article is persons voluntarily acquiring citizenship of a foreign state not to be Indian citizen. If a person voluntarily acquires the citizenship of some other country, they can't be Indian citizens anymore. That is given in Article 9. And then 10, till when we can enjoy all the rights conferred to citizens, is given in Article 10 and Article 11. This is quite important because the Constitution empowers Parliament to make any laws regarding citizenship, right of citizenship. Okay. Till now, we saw articles from 5 to 11. In that, we only saw those people who became the citizen of India at the commencement of Constitution, right? That is Jan 26, 1950. But what about if a person from USA wants to come and settle in India and he wants to become an Indian citizen? Is there any possibility? Is that given in that 5 to 11 articles? No, right? But if you notice this article 11, it empowered Parliament to make such law. Okay, these articles. Okay, if you don't read these articles, you won't be able to like you have to, if there are 4 options given, you must be able to eliminate certain options, right? If you don't know these articles, it will be a problem for you while answering the question. So that is only I'm giving it in one liner. Actually, the text is too much, but I'm just giving you a one liner of this, okay? So just 5 minutes, okay, Tanya? Okay, so what about this person? If he wants to become Indian citizen, is there any act regarding that? So Parliament has made an act, Citizenship Act of 1955. Okay. So Citizenship Act talks about 2 things, acquisition of citizenship and laws of citizenship. How can one acquire citizenship? So these 5 are the things: by birth, by descent, registration, naturalization, and by incorporation of territory. And laws of citizenship by renunciation, termination, and deprivation. So this you will know, but renunciation means a person will voluntarily come and renounce his citizenship. By termination means when he acquires the citizenship of another country, his citizenship will get automatically terminated. And by deprivation means if he has shown some disloyal to the constitution or has obtained citizenship by fraud, then he will be deprived of his citizenship. Okay. Answer this: can we have a dual citizenship? Have you heard anyone saying that I'm a citizen of India and also a citizen of some other country? Fine. So everyone is clear about this, right? That is not possible because our Indian constitution provides only a single citizenship. Fine. So remember this line. Even if you have 2 colored pens, write it in your note, because now it will look easy, but when you answer this in your exam, it will be quite difficult to answer it because there are lots of articles, right? So citizenship, article 5 to 11. 5 to 11 is citizenship, not anything else. So remember this. This slide is very important because you have to remember it. One country and resident of other country. Yeah, they can be resident of other country. So if someone has acquired green card in US, it doesn't mean they are the citizen of that country. They are the resident of that country, but not the citizen. They are the citizen of India. So India provides for only single citizenship. Okay, Tanya. Okay, Tanya. That is your doubt, right? Fine. Answer this now. So now you came to know that, right? Article 5 to 11 is for citizenship. So if a question comes to you regarding citizenship, then it must be Article 5 and not more than 5, less than 5 or more than 11. This is why I gave you this slide. Okay. Fine. So we discussed about citizenship, and the next and very important part is fundamental rights. Okay. Okay. Fundamental rights, this is the inspiration from Constitution of USA. There it is called as Bill of Rights. Here it is called as fundamental rights. So we saw that it is our constitution is a bag of borrowed material. So this inspiration is from USA. And they are called fundamental for 2 reasons. What are they? Because they are basic for the all-round development of the individual. Of course, only if we have certain freedoms and rights, then we can develop, okay, right? And also without this, the individual cannot exist in dignified manner. We can exist, but we can't exist in dignified manner. That is it. It acts as a check on unlimited powers of the state and it is available against the state. What is this? It means if we say there are fundamental rights for us, it not only means that there are fundamental rights that the state is providing us. It is also that there are various restrictions on the state. State means we will see what is the definition of it. There are certain restrictions on the state that the state should not interfere in our freedoms and liberty. Okay, so that is what is, it is available against the state. And they are not absolute. What is the meaning of not absolute? Even though we say that fundamental rights are very fundamental and we have a fundamental right, for example, right to speech and expression. Just because you have this fundamental right, can you talk whatever comes to your mouth? Just saying that I have a right to speech and expression. What will happen then? Either the opposite party will break your teeth, right? Otherwise, there is also provision in law that you can be punished. So that is what is, they are not absolute. There are restrictions on them. And during emergency, they can be suspended. So all these fundamental rights during emergency, national emergency, they can be suspended except 2 fundamental rights. That is Article 20 and 21 cannot be suspended. Other all articles will be suspended. Okay. So this is what we are talking about. So citizen is saying, I know my fundamental rights, you can't do whatever you want. Of course, yes, state can't interfere in everything of a citizen. State has certain restrictions that is given by our fundamental rights. Fine. So Article 12 speaks about definition of state. Before looking into the definition of state, please type in the chat box how many states and union territories are right now in our country. This question might be silly, but still I just wanted to know. Just type. Because there are recent changes in states and union territories also. Just type how many states and how many union territories are there in our country. 28 states. How about union territories? Actually, as of today, there are only 28 states and 8 union territories, not 9. Because the current affairs is also part in your syllabus, right? Recently, you know, 2 union territories, Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. These two are merged and made into single union territory. Okay, so right now, don't forget this. There are only 28 states and 8 union territories. Okay, everyone will have this confusion because Jammu Kashmir was made into 2 union territories, right? So 28 states and 8 union territories. If you have doubt, please Google it, okay? And then, so definition of state. State here is not those 28 states that we were talking here, right? So state has a different definition under different parts. For example, part 3, that is fundamental rights. Here the state includes all these things. Legislative and executive organs of union government and also the legislative executive organs of state government, all the local authorities and statutory and non-statutory authorities. Basically, if you see, whatever the government has its hands on, it will be considered as a state here. So this is the definition of state. Okay, if there is an article that says state shall provide this or state shall provide something else, it means all this, not only the 28 states we are talking about. Fine. Article 13, this is an important article because it says that whatever laws that is inconsistent with the fundamental rights shall be void. So whatever laws that were made before the commencement of constitution and also after the commencement of constitution, they should be consistent with the fundamental right. If they are not consistent with the fundamental right, they can be declared void. Who can do this? Who can review those laws? Supreme Court under Article 32 and High Court under Article 226 will review those laws, and if they are inconsistent, they will be considered void. This is what Article 13 says. That is called as doctrine of judicial review. Judicial review. Judicial means judiciary, that is court. Review means it reviews the laws, that is judicial review. Doctrine of judicial review. Fine. You have any doubt, post it then and there, okay? Okay. From the point of view of the person to whom the rights are available, the fundamental rights may be classified into these 3 categories. So those first line 15, 16, 19 and 30, they are only to citizens, and then the others, they are for citizens and foreigners, and 15, 17, 18, 20 and 24 are absolute limitations upon the legislative power. It means it tells the legislative that you should do that, you should not do that. It is like a restriction on the state. Okay. So we will study fundamental rights by dividing it into these 6 categories. Okay, right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. Okay, I hope that everyone is following. Okay, right to equality is given under Article 14 to Article 18. So Article 14 says that the state shall not deny to any person equality before law or the equal protection of law within the territory of India. What is this equality before law? It actually prohibits unequal treatment. It says that you can't treat anyone unequally. So absence of any special privilege in favor of any individual right. And what about this equal protection of laws? It means it demands equal treatment. So enjoyment of their rights and privileges without any favoritism or discrimination. So these are the 2 things that Article 14 says. Fine. 14 speaks about equality. So let's remember this article by remembering this weighing scale. Okay. So put a 1 here and then 4 here. Just remember this picture. So whenever Article 14 is asked to you in your question or in 4 option, you should know that it speaks about equality. Okay. This is how we should remember the article. Studying and remembering it is okay, but remember something like this so that you will not make any mistakes. Fine. So equality means it is Article 14. So it applies to all persons, not only to citizens. It is for citizens and foreigners. Okay. Then Article 15, non-discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So actually it prohibits the state from discriminating against the citizen on grounds of these 5 grounds are there. That's why I circled that 5. So Article 15 means it ends with 5. So 5 means there are 5 grounds of non-discrimination. So they are religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth. Okay. So then Article 15 clause 2, what it says means no citizen shall be subjected to any disability or restrictions or conditions with regard to access to shops. So in today's the world also there are some remote villages where some people are not allowed to use any wells or not even to use a road and all. So that type of activity should be prohibited. That is given under Article 15 clause 2. Fine. So we saw that equality must be given to everyone. State should not treat anyone unequally, everything, right? But we saw these two articles, 15 and 14. After discussing 15 and 14, our society will look something like this. This is a very famous picture. You might have known this. Here for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So this is what we have been talking till now with Article 14 and Article 15, right? So here only that crow and that monkey can climb it, right? What about others? Likewise, in our society also there is lots of inequality prevailing. Fine. So how are we going to overcome that inequality? That is through these special provisions. Article 15 clause 3, it speaks about the state shall make special provision for the advancement of women and children. And then Article 15 clause 4, special provision for socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. And 15 clause 5, the same 3 things will come here, but their admission to educational institution. This was added through 93rd Amendment Act of 2005. Okay. And 15 clause 6, this was a recent amendment. It says that the state shall make special provision for economically weaker section subject to 10% reservation. What is this economically weaker section? We know that there is a reservation for OBC, SCs, STs. But what about this general category? It is not that in general category everyone is rich. There are also someone who are economically weaker, right? For those persons, there is a reservation of 10%. This was added through 103rd Amendment Act of 2019. Everyone clear or you have any doubt? Please post it. Fine. After giving all these special privileges, now the picture will be something to your right. Fine. So before that, we just spoke about equality, just giving everyone equal opportunity. It is something like the left. Not all 3 are able to view that much. For example, we will consider that tall man as a person belonging to general category and then OBC and then SC, ST. Now, here justice is done by giving them special provision. So now all these 3 can be benefited. Fine. And then Article 16, this speaks about the opportunity in public employment. So 16 clause 1 says that it guarantees to all citizens equality of opportunity in employment, and 16 clause 2 it says it prohibits discrimination against the citizen on 6 grounds. In Article 15, there were 5 grounds. Here Article 16, it ends with 6, it has 6 grounds. The extra 1 ground is descent, okay? So religion, race, caste, sex, descent, or place of birth or residence. Here also there are 4 exceptions, like we saw in Article 15 clause 3, 4, 5, 6. Here also 16 clause 3, 4, 5, 6. 16 clause 3 means residence as an exception. Meda Sarin, of course, it is given in your module. That's why I'm taking all these. It is given in a very lengthy sentence. I am giving it to you in single word. It is given in your module. Institute module you have, right? It is given in your module. Only those clauses I am taking. So you have to study, I guess. You refer your module if you have doubt. Fine. So 16 clause 3 means residence as an exception. So residence as an exception, it is not in our country right now except 2 states, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. It provides residence as an exception for opportunity of public employment. Okay. And it also has a exception for backward classes if they think that that backward class is not adequately represented. And what about this religious or denominational institution? Example for denominational institution, if you know any. So if a person has to be appointed in a religious or denominational institution, that person must be practicing that religion or he must belong to that denomination. Example for denominational institution, for example, Ramakrishna Mission, it is a denominational institution. And then like this one, Here also 16 clause 6 is added through 103rd Amendment Act, and it is for the economically weaker section with 10% reservation. Fine. So is your doubt clear? Article 17, abolition of untouchability. It abolishes untouchability and forbids its practice in any form. So example for this, untouchability means we won't include those set of peoples into the mainstream of society. That is untouchability. It is prohibited. For example, there was a recent Sabrimala issue, you know that, right? And Supreme Court also gave a judgment for that. In that judgment, Supreme Court said that if women are not allowed inside the temple, it is violative of Article 17, this article, that they are actually practicing untouchability. So women should be allowed inside temple. So basically, Supreme Court will give judgment based on such articles. Okay, that is untouchability. And Article 18, abolition of titles. So British government, what they did is they used to confer titles like Raj Bahadur, Knight, Rai Bahadur, etc. on Indian citizens if they are loyal to British. So what this created is it created a class of inequality among the society. So to do away with this article was introduced. It says that no titles except military or academic distinction shall be conferred by the state, and others are like no citizen or any foreigner who are in the holding any office of profit in our country cannot accept any titles from any other country without the consent of president. Okay, that is what given in all these three things. Fine. Okay, now you answer me. What about titles like Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, Bharat Ratna, etc.? We said that titles are abolished. How about those titles? Do you have any idea? Is that allowed in our country? Of course, it is allowed, because this case came in front of Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said that it is given by Indian government, fine, but Supreme Court said that they are not at all titles, they are like awards. And also here abolition of titles means only titles which are hereditary in nature. For example, if your father, some of your father has got Bharat Ratna, is it possible that you can also say that I have inherited the title and I am also a Bharat Ratna awardee? No, like that is the difference here. Okay. Fine, Lakshmi has said awards. Very good. So remember this article by putting a crown on 18. So 18 means you should remember this crown. So that 18 is something related to titles. Fine. So remember this article by Article 18, and Article 18 has a crown over it. So whenever it is asked in your question, you can answer very clearly. Fine. And this is a very important article. It speaks about right to freedom. So it guarantees 6 fundamental rights to citizens. What are those 6 fundamental rights? Speech and expression, assembly, form association, movement, to reside and settle, and freedom of profession, occupation, trade, or business. Okay, these are available only to citizens and not to foreigners. Keep this in mind, and you should also remember all these 6. This is where we were talking about they are not absolute, right? So these are the restrictions on them. So Article 19 clause 2 says that the freedom of speech and expression can be restricted on these 8 grounds. So these are the 8 permissible restrictions. You have to mug up this. So sovereignty, and if it affects the sovereignty and integrity of India, then it is restricted. Security of state, friendly relation with foreign state, public order, decency or morality, contempt of court, defamation, incitement to an offense. So these are all the permissible restrictions. Fine. So Article 19 provides 6 fundamental rights, and there are 8 restrictions on them. Okay. Okay, we saw that there are fundamental rights for citizens, normal people, etc. Right? What about, is there any fundamental rights for persons who are convicted of offences? Of course, there is. Article 20 speaks about it. Article 20 says that protection against arbitrary and excessive punishment for any person who commits an offense. So this article is has taken care to safeguard the rights of persons accused of crime. Okay, so 3 provisions are under that: no ex post facto law, no double jeopardy, and no self-incrimination. What is this no ex post facto law means? If a person has committed a crime last week and a new law is created today, he can't be punished according to the new law that is created today. He has to be punished according to the law that was in force at the time he committed the crime. Right? This is applicable only to criminal cases and not for civil cases. And no double jeopardy means for the same offense he can't be punished twice. And no self-incrimination means no one can be compelled to be a witness against their own crime. That is no self-incrimination. So remember this article by this man. This person is convicted of offenses, fine. So let them put it like this. So if you remember, if you think about Article 20, just remember this picture, fine. So Article 20, it is something related to conviction of offenses, fine. Easy, right? Remember like this so that it is easy in your exam. And then Article 21, protection of life and personal liberty. So this is the article, these two articles, Article 20 and 21 will not get suspended during emergency. We saw that, right? So what this Article 21 says is, it states no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. What is this? No one can be deprived of his life. Fine. If there is a procedure established by law, he can be deprived of his life. Any example for this? No one can deprive you of your life. But there is one condition, for example, in death sentence. A person is being deprived of his life, right? How? Because there is a procedure to take away his life. Fine. That is the very good example for this article. So basically everything will come under this article, like right to information, right to privacy, even right to sleep will come under this article. There are various things under this article, not only life and life with personal liberty. There are lots of things, right to eat, right to roam everywhere you want. Not everywhere, there are restrictions on them. Basically many things come under this Article 21. Habeas corpus. What is this habeas corpus? That is a writ issued by Supreme Court. We will discuss at the end of this fundamental rights chapter. Okay, Lakshmi? You are saying that it is a procedure established by law. We will look about that. Okay. And then Article 21A. This was not in our constitution when it was written. It was actually introduced in our constitution through 86th Amendment Act of 2002. So it declares that the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all the children between the age of 6 and 14 years. Remember this age limit, 6 and 14 years. Okay. So that is Article 21A. Right to education. This is just a question for you. You don't have to answer, just for an awareness I'm giving you. And Article 22, safeguard against arbitrary arrest and detention. What if someone is getting arrested? What are the rights that he has actually? So this article guarantees the rights for them. It says that he has the right to consult and defended by a lawyer, and also while someone is arresting you, I mean the detaining authority, a police officer is arresting you, he should inform the grounds on which you are being arrested, not you. Whoever it is being arrested, he should inform the grounds. And also he should be produced before the magistrate within 24 hours. That is what this Article 22 says. Fine. So remember this article by this, basically arrest means we will remember handcuff, right? So remember, just remember this picture. These tricks might be silly, but I bet you this will help you in your exam. So remember this picture. 22 means something related to handcuff. It means something related to arrest. So that you can eliminate such chances. Answer this question. Abolition of untouchability is given under article. The Article 17. Fine. Shruti has answered. Okay, everyone is right, fine. Article 15, someone is saying. So here, if you have confusion through the method which we try to remember the articles, we can eliminate many things. Like Article 15, we said there are 5 grounds of discrimination, so it is not untouchability. Article 18, we just put a crown to it, right? So remember through that, we put a crown to it, so it is something related to title. And then Article 20, just now we saw, for persons convicted of offenses. So if you eliminate all these three, you will end up with Article 17. So this is why I'm making you to remember such articles. Fine. Okay, everyone is interactive. Okay, amazing way. Okay, you just remember, because many will think that constitution is tough, constitution is boring, only because we won't be able to remember all the articles. Even I can't remember most of the articles until I actually created all these things. After that only I was able to remember them. Otherwise, if you ask me, even I will say, no, I don't remember that. That's it. Fine. So let's discuss about right against exploitation. This is given under Article 23 and 24. So 23, it prohibits traffic in human beings, women, children, beggar. What is traffic in human beings means? Like selling and selling of women or children like goods. That is traffic. Kidnapping them and selling them as goods. So that is prohibited under Article 23. And then Article 24, it prohibits employing children below the age of 14 years in any hazardous profession. That is Article 24. So you just have to remember these in one-liners. So that is, this is not given much in your module also. Right? 23 and 24 means right against exploitation. And then right to freedom of religion. We know that our country is a secular country, right? So we can follow any religion we want. So these four articles actually empowers that. Article 25 offers freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, whereas Article 26 helps to manage religious affairs. So if there are certain rituals in your religion, you can follow it only till if it is not affecting any public order, morality or health. For example, previously there was a practice of sati. That was abolished. We can't practice it now because it is affecting health, it is affecting public order, etc. Right? So that is what is given here. And 27 and 28 means 28, it actually provides you the freedom not to pay taxes for religious expenses. And 28, if there is any educational institution which is wholly maintained by state, that is through government, there should not be any religious instructions. That is given under Article 28. So there can be religious instructions in some private institution, but not in those institutions which is wholly maintained by the state. Fine. And then the last thing, 29 and 30, this is regarding right to minorities. Right to minorities means it gives right to minorities both in cultural and education. So what is this minority? Minorities are generally people who are very less in number. So there are two kinds of minorities in our country, religious and linguistic minorities. Though there is no definition or there is no differences or anything under linguistic minority, there are actually some minorities in religion. Can anyone say how many religious minorities are there in our country? So Article 29 and 30 speaks about the rights of those minorities. Do anyone have an idea like which religion and all is considered as minority? Actually, there are six religions. So you can remember it as MSc, BJP. Maybe it is not important to you in constitution perspective, but current affairs is a part of your syllabus, right? It may come. So six religious minority, Muslim, Sikhs, Christian, and then BJP means Buddhist, J for Jains, P for Parsis. Okay, just remember this like MSc, BJP. Fine. So Article 29 provides protection for the interest of minorities. So a minority community can conserve their language, script or culture. And Article 30 says that they can establish and administer an educational institution to conserve their language, script and culture. Fine. This is Article 29 and 30. Okay, answer this. This right to property a fundamental right. Okay, fine. Actually, fundamental right was a actually this right to property was a fundamental right, but now it is not a fundamental right because this is given under Article 31. It was removed by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978. Now, if a question comes to you like this, this right to property is not a fundamental right, it is only a legal right. Okay, keep this in mind. Though it is under between Articles 12 and 35, which speaks about fundamental rights, this right to property is not a fundamental right. It has been removed. There is no Article 31 in our constitution right now. Okay. Okay. Many has answered like it has removed. Okay. Okay. Right to constitutional remedy. Someone has, was asking this habeas corpus, right? So right to constitutional remedies means actually the state provided us with all these rights, but what if these rights are violated? If there is no protection, if these rights are violated, what will we do? There won't be any meaning for this fundamental rights itself, right? Just a minute. Okay. Fine. So to safeguard all that, Constitution also provided for the remedies. Article 32, it guarantees the right to move to Supreme Court by the appropriate proceedings. So if any one of the fundamental rights is violated, you can directly move to Supreme Court. It is not must that you should first move to High Court and then by appeal you have to move to Supreme Court. It is not a must. If it is a violation of fundamental if it is a violation of fundamental rights, you can directly move to Supreme Court. Fine. Even you can move to High Courts also, but it is not a must. So these are the 5 writs: mandamus, habeas corpus, certiorari, prohibition, quo warranto. Fine. So 33 and 34, it is not given in your module, but still you should know that it is something regarding fundamental rights to armed forces. And 34, it is while the martial law is in force, when there is a national emergency or if there is any presidential rule, if martial law is in force, then the fundamental rights can be restrained. Okay, so that is in given in under Article 33 and 34. For example, for army personnel, they won't have all the fundamental rights that we have for the citizens. That is 33 and 34. And 35, like we studied in citizenship chapter, here also the last article is that the constitution empowers the parliament to make laws regarding this fundamental rights. Okay, that is article 35. This is what we discussed. You will get it in notes. So this is just a one-liner of what we have discussed till now. Here, right to constitutional remedies, the last one, article 13, it says that right to move to Supreme Court for the enforcement of fundamental rights. So the 5 writs are habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, and quo warranto. So we will discuss what are these five writs. Okay. Before that, answer me this question. So you are clear now, right? So Article 31, right to property is not a fundamental right. Fine. Shall we move to the next thing? Right to property is removed. It has been removed. Fine. Very good. Types of writs. We are speaking about those 5 writs, right? Types of writs. First is habeas corpus. So habeas corpus means, ma'am, 35. Could you explain much? 35 is regarding, like in citizenship chapter, we saw that these are all the provisions. 5 to 10 are the provisions in Constitution. If you want to make any laws regarding citizenship, Parliament can make law. But here, that is for citizenship. Here, for fundamental rights, these are all the fundamental rights till 34. 12 to 34, there are certain fundamental rights. But if there are anything new to be added, it can be done through laws, and only Parliament can do it and not state legislator. So it empowered the Parliament to make laws in this regard. That is Article 35. So it is the power of Parliament. Okay. Is that okay, Lakshmi? It is the power of Parliament which the Constitution has given to it. Fine. Habeas corpus. You might have seen this in movies, right? In many movies, we will see this habeas corpus. So if a person is arrested and his family or friends doesn't know where he is kept detained, or they doesn't know anything about it, and he has been kept under detention for more than 24 hours. We saw that he must be produced before the court within 24 hours, right? So what if he has been in the detention for more than 24 hours and we don't know anything about him? Then we can approach either Supreme Court or High Court, and the court will issue this writ. This is a national order to let the court know on what ground he has been confined and to set him free. So basically, the court will direct that detaining authority to produce that man before the court. So this is habeas corpus. Clear? So the applicant may be the prisoner or any person acting on his behalf to safeguard his liberty. Fine. And then mandamus. Mandamus means nothing but it literally means we command. If you go to a public office and the public official that tells that he is not in mood to, can you repeat again? Okay, I can repeat again. Habeas corpus means if a person is confined without legal justification. If some police officer has arrested a person and he has been confined and he is not produced before the court, even after the expiry of 24 hours, then his friends or family can approach the court and they could file a case. In return, the Supreme Court will issue habeas corpus to that police official. So that police officer now has to produce that person in front of the court. That is habeas corpus. Okay. So if the habeas corpus is like given to some detaining authority, it is a must that he should obey that. He has to produce that man before the court. If he doesn't obey it, it will be considered as a contempt of court, and that police officer will be detained or punished. Fine, Medha Serin. Can I move to next? Okay. Mandamus means, okay, fine. So mandamus means if you go to a public, I'm starting it from again here, you go to a public office and that the public official says that I am not going to do my public duty, I'm not going to sign this or sign that. He has to do that, right? But he says that he's not going to do that. In that case, you can approach court and the court will issue this mandamus writ over that public official saying that please perform your duty. Why are you not performing your duty? Perform your duty. It is a court order to make him perform his duty. Okay, that is mandamus. Clear here? This is just to tell the public body or the corporation or inferior court to just do what your duty is. Just do your duty. Don't say no. It is issued by the court. Fine. So if you have doubt, ask me. Otherwise, I can go to the next thing. Fine, no doubts, I guess. Then prohibition. Prohibition and certiorari are one more or the less same. The prohibition means to forbid. So it is issued by a high court to a lower court or tribunal to prevent the latter from exceeding its jurisdiction or violating the rules or laws. The prohibition means it is basically issued before the trial of the case. If the higher court thinks that the lower court is exceeding its jurisdiction or it is violating the law, then the higher court can prohibit its action. Okay, it is basically issued before the trial of the case. But what if the lower court has issued the order, has given its verdict, and there is a law in that error? Sorry, there is a error in that law. What can they do? The higher court can issue certiorari. So certiorari means here it can the higher court can also ask the lower court to transfer that case to the higher court, or it can even squash the order that is given by the lower court. So this is curative in nature. This is preventive, only preventive in nature because it is issued before the trial of the case. This is both preventive and curative in nature. Fine. So both are one and the same. It is issued by the higher court to lower court or tribunal. And then finally, the final writ is quo warranto. Quo warranto means by what authority or warrant. We will take an example here. For example, if there is an IAS or IPS officer and we think and we have evidence that he didn't claim that post through legal means. He didn't write the exam at all. He claimed that post illegally and we have a certain evidence with us. We can go to Supreme Court and the Supreme Court, if it thinks that it is fine, it can issue this quo warranto writ on that public official, and that public official has to prove that he claimed that office legally and not through illegal means. This is quo warranto. Basically, all the four writs we discussed previously, it can be issued by the aggrieved person. But here, any interested person can issue this writ, but we should have perfect evidence for that. Okay. So these are the 5 writs. We completed this fundamental rights. This is a lengthy chapter. Answer this. If no, post your doubts here. Okay, certiorari. Most of you are getting doubts here. Okay. Mandamus is, if you go to a public office and the public official has to perform his duty. If you are giving any, you are asking, for example, here there is a like visa within, he has to give the person visa within 20 days. That official has to give visa to a person within 20 days, but he is not giving it. What that aggrieved person can do is he can go to court and the court will directly order him that you should give visa to him within 20 days because that is the procedure and you have to do your duty. That is what this mandamus does. It actually commands the public official or the inferior court to do their duty if they are not performing it. Fine, Nehal. And then can you explain certiorari again? Certiorari means to be certified or to be informed. Basically, if a higher court thinks that the lower court has done some error in their order or verdict, or they are exceeding their jurisdiction, means the lower court will ask the higher court will ask the lower court to transfer that case to me. I will look after it. Otherwise, the higher court can even squash the order of the lower court if the court has already given the order. So, if the lower court has given its verdict, it is not final. The higher court has the power to squash that order, and then the trial will be continued in the higher court, and justice will be provided. That is certiorari. It is both preventive and curative because it can ask the lower court to transfer the case pending, and also it can squash the order of lower court. Fine. Now answer this, please. Fine. Okay, the answer for the first one is special provisions for economically weaker section was added to 103 Amendment Act of 2019. Fine, very good. Everyone is answering now. Fine. And the answer for second one is habeas corpus. It means to have the body of. Fine. So shall we move to the next topic and then we will wind up. We will meet after the break. Is that okay? DPSP. So Directive Principles of State Policy. What is this Directive Principles of State Policy? Actually, they are like the directives or guidelines. For example, if we buy any electronic goods or something, there will be a manual with it, right? Like you have to use it like this, like that and all. Likewise, directive principles are directives or guidelines given to the state when the state is framing the policies. Okay, so that is directive principle. So that is what is given here, to be kept in mind by the state when it formulates policies and enacts laws. And they are an instrument of instruction. That is what we saw. Like manual, it is an instrument of instruction, and it is borrowed from, like we saw, various things are borrowed from various other constitutions of other countries. This is borrowed from Irish constitution, and they are not legally enforceable by court for their violation. We saw under Article 32, if any fundamental rights are getting violated, we can approach court, right? But in this case, if DPSP is getting violated, we can't approach courts. It is not enforceable. That is what is given here. Fundamental rights are enforceable, whereas DPSP is not enforceable by law. Okay, here the court cannot compel the government to make laws on DPSP. It is on the own discretion of the state. Okay, and also it is not enforced by law. That is given under Article 37. So this is the basic difference between fundamental rights and DPSP. And this former is fundamental rights are enforceable, DPSP are not enforceable by law. Fine. So these are the articles 36 to 51. We can classify this into three things and study. First is socialistic principle, then Gandhian, and then liberal intellectual principles. Okay. So some articles like 43, 47 will be repeated because they contain both socialistic and Gandhian principles in them. Example we will see now. So socialistic principles, there are 8 socialistic principles. This follows the idea of socialism. So here, if possible, you answer me for everything. Okay. So Article 38. Article 38 says that promote social welfare, minimize inequality in income, status, opportunities, facilities. So how is this implemented by the state? So basically, all the DPSPs will be implemented by the states through certain laws or through certain schemes and all. How is this one implemented? Promote social welfare, minimize inequality. Planning Commission was there in our country, right? The main aim of Planning Commission is to create social welfare. Fine. And 39, adequate means of livelihood, fair distribution of wealth, equal pay for equal work. So, for example, for fair distribution of wealth, almost all states have abolished zamindari and they have distributed the lands among the landless laborers, right? And then 39A, this was added through 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. So remember this amendment, 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, it is very important. So 39A, how is this implemented? There is a Legal Services Authorities Act 1987, I guess. Through that, various nationwide, various this free legal aids were established and free legal aid was given to poor person. So that is established through this. And then 41, provide the citizen. What amendment? 39A is 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. And then this 41, right to work, right to education, and to public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, disease, and other disabilities. For example, for old age persons, certain states are giving them old age pensions above the age of 65 years, right? Not all states, certain states are giving. That is the best example for this. Okay, answer this. This is to make you clear that how you should approach fundamental rights and how you should approach DPSP. Fundamental rights, you should know everything like Article 21 means it says this and its provision and all. But while there is a question regarding DPSP, basically you should know what is fundamental rights And what is DPSP and how should you differentiate between these two? So answer this. Equal pay for equal work is given under. See, many of you are saying A here because fundamental rights. Because we saw that equality means that is given in fundamental rights. But here equal pay for equal work. Just now we saw in 39th article. Many of you are saying C also. Very good. Here you see third one, equal pay for equal work. It is in DPSP, which is the socialistic principle. DPSP, oh, can you explain DPSP again? DPSP means that they are like directives or guidelines which a state should keep in mind while they formulate new law. So someone is asking fair distribution of wealth, and I'm saying land here. So whenever you are formulating new laws, a state is formulating new laws. These are all the guidelines which a state should keep in mind and try to implement it. That is what given in DPSP. Fair distribution of wealth means almost all states abolished zamindari system and they distributed the land among various landless laborers. So that is how the wealth is distributed in a fair manner. Fine, and then 42, securing just and humane condition for work, maternity relief. There is a Maternity Benefit Act, right? Example for that. And then 43, living wage, proper condition of work, ensuring a standard, decent standard of life. There are Minimum Wages Act, Factories Act. You don't have to remember everything. I'm just giving you examples like how it is implemented. Fine. And then 43A, this is also added through 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Participation of workers in the management and of organization and industries. And then 47, raise the level of nutrition, standard of life, improve public health. So improving public health will be the very important agenda in every government's policy, right? How it is done? So National Rural Health Mission is there, right? So these are the certain examples for that. And Gandhian principles, these are the principles which the Gandhi told during the Indian national movement. First is organized village panchayat. So in our country, it is implemented. We have 3-tier panchayati raj system in our country. Fine. And then 43, promote cottage industries. How is it promoted? We have Khadi and village industries boards, silk boards, etc. And 43B, this is added through 97th Amendment Act of 2003. Okay. So this one DPSP is added through 97th Amendment, not 42nd. Cooperative societies. And then 46. Promote the education and economic interest of SCs, STs and other weaker sections of the society and to protect them from social injustice and exploitation. So how the education and economic interest of SCs and STs are protected? There are reservation of seats for SCs and STs in educational institutions and government jobs, right? Through that, this is protected. And how they are protected from the social injustice and exploitation. There is Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act, right? So this is how basically all the DPSP will be implemented through certain laws of the state. And then 47, prohibit the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs. There are various laws to prohibit the consumption of drugs. I don't know about drinks. If you know anything, any law relating to that, just tell me. And then 48, prohibit the slaughter of cows, calves and other milk stock. So many states have prohibited the slaughter of cows, right? Not all states. Many states have did this. So that is DPSP Article 48. Liberal intellectual, this Article 44, Uniform Civil Code, it speaks about Uniform Civil Code. Uniform Civil Code means for each and every religion, there will be different set of rules or regulations for marriage, divorce, inheritance of property. Islamic law will say something and Hindu Marriage Act will say something. But this uniform code tries to bring uniform code for all the citizens irrespective of their religion. Okay, so that is given in DPSP. So it is not yet implemented, but we'll see when it is getting implemented. Okay, and then Article 45. So this provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. Previously, it was like until they complete the age of 14 years. But the subject matter of this is changed to 86th Amendment Act. Okay, now it reads only till 6 years. Fine. And then 48, to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. So many states are providing improved seeds, fertilizers to the farmers and all, right? And then protect monuments, places and objects of artistic or historic interest, etc. So see this, what is the actual thing happening in our country? Someone has even written the phone number, I guess. I don't know whether he thinks that his name will be spoken for next 100 years or whether the history will speak his name. I don't know why people do this. But there are laws like Archaeological Sites and Remains Act, example, etc. for that to protect the environment and monuments, etc. Right? Then 48A to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forest and wildlife. Many examples are there like Wildlife Protection Act and Forest Protection Act, and there are pollution control boards also to protect the environment from pollution. And then 50, separate judiciary from executive. What is this? We already saw that judiciary is separate, executive is separate, legislative is separate. Here, what it means is previously collectors, tahsildars, what they do is they will also do their executive work and also they will involve in judicial works. So now, after the introduction of criminal procedure code, the judicial work has been given to the judicial magistrates. So this is how separate judiciary and executive has been separated. Okay, you don't have to know this much about it. I'm just giving you so that you can understand better. And then Article 51. So promote international peace and security, foster respect for international law and treaty obligation, etc. So last article it speaks about international peace and security. How is this implemented? We follow the policy of non-alignment, policy of punch shield, etc. That is how it is getting implemented. So it is not must for each and every state or for the government to implement DPSP. It is on its own discretion whether it can implement it or not. Fine. This is the amendment we are talking about, 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. So these are the four things that was done through 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. In 39 means it just changed the subject matter of it. Okay, it added this subject to secure opportunities for the healthy development of children. 39A, 43A, 48A, we discussed it sufficiently. Fine. And then 86th Amendment Act, we saw that the subject matter of Article 45, it has been changed by 86th Amendment Act of 2002. We discussed what it is, right? And the 97th Amendment Act of 2011, it added this article 43B, promote voluntary formation, autonomous, that's what these are, cooperative societies regarding it. Fine. We completed this DPSP also. So next is fundamental duties. We will discuss after the break, okay? Because already it is too much. We discussed too many articles. Like in citizenship, we discussed 7 and then 24 and then 16 articles. Fine. If you have any doubts, please post it here. I will explain you. And fundamental duties and Supreme Court, Parliament chapter and all, we will discuss after the break. Fine. You have to mug up many articles. There is no way for that, but still we try to like remember various articles like Article 20, Article 15, Article 18, 22, etc. Right? Articles. Actually, for you, it is very less article. You only 10% you are going to study about Indian Constitution. If you study the whole Indian Constitution, you should know all that 395 articles. What will you do? I mean, 470 articles. What will you do with that? So shall we wind up the session? Thank you. We'll meet after the break. Bye.